Vinny, I had another Brett Goldstein dream, and he's creeping into my dreams, man.
This is not what I expected.
It's a saga. Well, if I have a third dream, that means I'm actually going to meet him, and it's all going to come true, right? That's the law
Is
of
that what
dreams, I think.
happens?
Oh,
Is it?
some say
Then
folklore.
there's probably a lot of people that I'm due to meet.
Okay. This dream was like I just went around for dinner at his house. I can't remember like what happened, but I just met like Brett invited me to his house and we just like sat and chatted shit for like a whole dream. And this whole dream went for like 3 hours. And I remember waking up and being like, fuck, that was good. That was good.
I mean, I feel like he would be a nice guy. I feel like he would invite you around for food and cook you a nice meal.
Mm-hmm.
You
I'm
know?
waiting. I'm waiting for the invite.
Yeah, I don't think that's, out of character for him. Not that
Mm-hmm.
I know Brett personally, but I
Well,
just get those good vibes.
I listened to his podcast, Films to Be Buried With, and he's a lovely dude. Lovely, lovely
Yes,
guy.
I love that podcast.
It's very good. Very good. He is a character that is in Ted Lasso. Wow. Which is what this show is all about. This is Ted Lasso post-match. I am Aiden. Here is my good friend Vinny.
Hello.
Hello. What we do every single week is we break down every single episode. We're talking about characters, doing a little bit of theory, seeing where it's going. And at the very end of the episode, we will crown an MVP, the most valuable player of the episode. So stick around, follow us, and subscribe on whatever platforms you're listening on, and should be a fun time. Are you ready, Vinny?
Yeah, I am. There's only a few episodes left, so it's all getting very interesting now.
That hurts. That hurts a lot. Which
it does.
It means there's only a few episodes of this left.
That's true. And then me and Aiden will never talk again.
Thank God. Thank God. This I'm kidding. Okay, this episode is, and I'm gonna so pronounce this wrong. Let's
Yeah, I'm gonna leave this to you.
Yeah, thanks, man. La Locker Room Aux Folles is how I'm gonna say it, but you can say it however you want to say it. It's a let's not lock it into one pronunciation, guys.
I think it's the O. It's French in it.
I think so.
It's the locker room O. Follow.
I don't know.
Oh, follow.
Someone's going to correct us in the comments.
I think it means for two.
Oh, that's kind of cool. La Locker Room for two. That would be cool.
I think that's what it means. I could be wrong. I'm basing that off of something that was mentioned in an episode of the X-Files. So
bit of intertextuality there. It's written by Chuck Hayward, who is a writer, if you couldn't tell. This episode is very Colin and Isaac focused, which is kind of rare. You know, we had a bit of Colin screen time earlier in the season, and he's had obviously this arc of him coming out throughout this season. And it's nice to see Isaac. It's nice to see him and Isaac being the stars of an episode, because that's so rare.
Especially after last week, where obviously it ended on that sort of cliffhanger. So I think we knew that this was going to come to the forefront of this episode.
So yeah, it's addressing that cliffhanger of Isaac being aware that Colin is gay, and where they left it off was like, you don't know if he's angry at Colin for not coming out to him because they're such good friends, or if he's sort of like, you know, homophobic or whatever. Which I don't think any one of us actually thought that Isaac was going to be homophobic, but
yeah,
that's where it left off. And it's clear in this week's episode, which I'm going to not pronounce the name. It's clear that in this week's episode,
episode 9.
It's clear that in season 3, episode 9, these characters are still, there's still tension there. I so lost my train of thought.
Yes.
And yeah, what did you think of the start of this episode?
I thought it was good. Yeah, I enjoyed seeing Richmond on a winning streak a little bit.
Of course.
I really enjoyed Roy saying, you know, everyone did well and Beard fainting. Yep. I thought it was absolutely hilarious. But yeah, I think, you know, from the get off, you see the tension between Colin and Isaac, and you know that that's going to be the big issue in this episode, and it definitely was. And I think especially with starting out with the sort of Richmond playing really well, like on a winning streak, and then all this tension between between Isaac and Colin.
Yep. I was like, who the fuck is Oscar?
Oscar Isaac.
Yeah. I see. Okay, I can understand that mistake.
Yeah, so all the tension between Isaac and Colin, I think you can tell is going to be an issue unless it gets resolved. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what this episode does. It shows that, like, with just things left unsaid and unspoken about, it's going to affect the team.
Yeah.
And they sort of deal with that. That's pretty much, it really is the sort of, there's not a lot of other storylines in this episode. There are little bits, but it is very focused on Colin and Isaac.
But I appreciate that. I think it sort of lost its way halfway through the season. And then this coming to the back end of the season, they're sort of, I think the scripts are a lot stronger and they're tying together the A and the B plots a lot nicer. So like, it's hard. Yeah, like you said, it all feels like it's one storyline, but there is, you know, another story going on in there with Roy. And so that, but it's so like intricately connected into the A plot that you kind of don't really notice.
And see, I would even say that I wouldn't have even picked up the Roy storyline. I would say the other storyline in the episode was Nate's storyline.
Yep.
So, you know, there are still multiple characters that we're focusing on, but it did very much feel like sort of 80% was Colin and Isaac.
Yeah, definitely. Which was good, and it's obviously an important topic to tackle, so I'm glad they gave it the time, and I'm glad that so much of it's so interesting because it really is like a locker room episode. Like 80% of this episode does just take place in the locker room, whether it's at you know, before the game or like after training or whatever. It's I think it's really nice sort of closed episode. So okay, so the sort of tensions growing throughout the episode. Colin seeks a bit of advice from Trent, which I thought was like really cute to see that he's got Trent in his corner, and he's just give him time. I appreciate that he was like, you shouldn't have to give him time, but some people just need it, so you've just got to give him time. Thought that was cool, and really like it all sort of kicks off when they're at a game and they're 1-0. Who are they versing? It's bloody that team.
Brighton.
Yeah, the on Havari.
Brighton and Hove Albion.
You're right. Why not just? Why do they have all the extra stuff there? I don't know. Football man. So Isaac goes crazy at a fan for saying the other F word, which I thought Isaac going bananas was so cool to see. Like, we know he's kind of like got that AP temper, and when he goes off, it's very cool.
Yeah, but before that, obviously they go 1-0 down, and Isaac gets angry at Colin.
Oh yes, yeah, I forgot about that. What a good recap pod.
So obviously, like, they're still sort of not making it very clear on why Isaac is giving Colin the cold shoulder, you know. Like, even before the game kicks off, all their hands go in, Isaac takes his hand out and then puts it back in again, sort of like to create a distance between him and Colin. And then when they go 1-0 down, he gets really aggressive, takes out on Colin. Like, you know, Sam has to like calm him down. And then obviously, like halftime whistle goes. Isaac gets very, very aggy with a fan, which I really enjoyed seeing, because obviously he's got this very you know, rough sort of like he's like, he is a very sort of Roy Kent-esque character. He's very angry.
I love how they're like, not even Roy Kent would do this.
Yeah, and I think that it's, you know, it's nice to see him sort of lose his shit a little bit, you know, rightly so, I think. Because, you know, we see, although Isaac's got like a very like rough exterior, he's always like doing the right thing. He's always like Nat, and he's sort of like a voice of reason a lot of the time. So it is almost like refreshing to see him lose his shit, because I feel like we don't see it a lot.
This episode came out at such the perfect time for Australians because we have obviously the AFL, the Aussie Rules Australian Football League, and there's literally all over the news the last like couple of days has been this sort of whole thing of booing, and should booing be a thing of the past and stuff at games, because there's been a few instances. There's a Adam Goods instance, this guy called Adam Goods who got like booed for his race like 10, 15 years ago or something, and that was like a huge thing. And obviously, like with sport, there's a lot of booing just at different times in the sport. And our club recently booed when a player that just like fucked off from our club and went to another club and kind of left us in a bit of a array. He came back to play our club and everyone booed him on the field and stuff, which I think is like, that's kind of fun and fine and whatnot. But then there was recently this player who got he's called Buddy Franklin, and he got booed just out of nowhere. Like just a random crowd were just booing him in this random game. Whenever he got near the ball, he just got booed like crazy. And there's a lot of talks that it was a racially related incident again. And so now it's all over the news whether or not booing and that sort of interaction should just be banned or not. Because you don't know what's going on in players' heads and things like that. I don't think you're ever going to ban booing, but
no, you can't. It's that crowd mentality sort of thing.
Exactly.
But I think it's like is it series 1 of Ted Lasso with the crowd shouting like, "You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing," and then they call him a wanker. Yeah. They're chanting wanker at Ted.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. I think that's it's going to happen in football.
Yeah.
And like, there's always football chants. There's always there's chants relating to certain players, and there's just like general booing or general cheering.
Yeah.
But obviously what this does is take a very like hate speech sort of shouting and chant, and is like, it isolates it and it calls it out, and it this random fan in the crowd is just shouting absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
And a player hears it, of course he's going to react to it.
Yeah.
If he's chanting horrible stuff like that,
Yeah.
And I think the episode does that well, because obviously there's no way that a crowd of people chanting, there's no way that the players just can't hear anything.
Yeah.
But I think some people forget that, because obviously you're in a crowd, like, oh, they're not going to hear me. But
yeah, I think like the big thing is like there's just got to be more consequences for people that do say things like the F word and things that they shouldn't be saying. Like this incident with this guy that was just getting booed on the weekend for literally no reason. Like he's like one of the greats in the game. He's kicked 1,000 goals in his career. Like like there's no reason at all for him to get booed. And people just did. And that's just like where it's just kind of fucking mean. Like there's
it's just like, why?
Yeah, there's no two ways about it. So you're never going to ban booing, but I think there's got to be more repercussions for people who are doing it the wrong way. That was a little tangent.
I appreciated that. Obviously Isaac reacted to it, which obviously he shouldn't have done.
Yep.
But like you said, like, and I think like Roy said, you don't know what's going on in players' lives and in their heads.
Yeah.
But what I did like is that they had the fan in the stands removed.
Yeah, that was important. I think
he got kicked out. Yeah.
So okay, so let's move on from that. So they go down to the change rooms, and Isaac is like mad. He's like shaking in his, like he's got his fist clenched, and it's all spooky. And everyone's like, "Oh, just leave it." And he's like, "No, I'm sick of just leaving it." And he storms off.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that Ted sort of went to go and talk to him, but Roy was like, "No, I got this one, pal," which I think is good, because it's like it's a time and place for who you need to talk to who. Like Roy is he's the guru of the coaching stuff.
Yes.
And so it makes sense Ted just doing a
and
little
I think,
"Don't worry, guys" speech wouldn't work.
Yeah, and I think that it works with Roy talking to Isaac, because obviously Roy was asked to do the press conference earlier in the episode,
Yep.
and he didn't do it. And that was his, like, Rebecca told him to do it, and he didn't, and he let Rebecca down, and he wasn't very, like, he didn't take responsibility. Whereas I think here he steps up the mark a bit as a coach.
Yep.
Like, he's supposed to do a press conference as the coach, and he doesn't. But then with Isaac, he steps up a bit, and he's like, right, no, I'll deal with this.
Yep.
And he gets through to Isaac. And then obviously with, like, Roy's little storyline, it all comes to fruition at the end, where he then does the press conference. But I think, like, that tied those two stories together really well.
Yeah.
And it helped Roy's character and Roy's story in this episode. As minor as it was, it helped that move forward, as well as also it made sense for him to be the one to talk to Isaac, especially being both, like, team captains and being both, like, quite aggressive. I don't know. I was really happy with that. I was really happy that they got Roy to do it instead of Ted just rambling about American football, which obviously he did in the episode anyway.
Yeah, he does. It's so funny. But, yeah, two of the best gags in the episode come out of this sort of immediate sequence here. The first is Higgins saying, "Don't worry, guys. The guy's been removed. Sorry about my dad."
Yeah.
And everyone's
and then he's like, "Oh, read the room." I want a Higgins episode.
We need a Higgins episode. We're overdue it. And the other one is when Isaac storms out, he gives Sam the captain band.
Yes.
And Jamie, just like a silent moment where Jamie's like, "You want to give me that?" And Sam's like, "Oh, this?" Jamie's like, "Yeah, come on." And Sam's like, just gives him the finger. It's so fucking funny.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I love Jamie. He's such a great character. And even though, he didn't really do a lot in this episode, he still sort of steals scenes for me. And that little gag between him and Sam, brilliant.
It'll be interesting because we don't really have time to stick on it now, but I wonder if Jamie will end up possibly becoming captain by the end of the show, because we don't know what the repercussions for Isaac are at the end of this episode. I assume they're going to do some kind of, I don't know what you call it in the UK, but like a football tribunal that he's going to have to go to, and they'll figure out the consequences for his actions. I don't know,
because all he did was get a red card. That just means that he gets sent off, and I think that means he misses the next game.
Yeah, it does, but you can have extra things outside of that, because he can get reported externally and then banned. But
he didn't actually
longer,
do anything. He didn't, like, hit the guy or anything. So, I think it will be fine for Isaac, but maybe I don't know. I don't know what happened with that.
We hope that guy is okay. So Roy gives a really sort of comforting. You see a really comforting side of Roy as he chats to Isaac, which was really sweet. And meanwhile, Will's in the kit room just offering bomb advice as well, which is great to see. And then he takes it too far, and everyone's like, "Fucking Will, come on, mate."
I enjoyed that, Roy and Isaac sat talking is cut between the locker room.
Yes.
I loved how they did that, and I loved how with the cuts, you sort of know what's happened, but you don't know what was said.
Yes, they cut out specific bits, don't they? I noticed that.
And I think it worked really well. Like, Colin stands up and he's like, "No, Isaac's not gay," because that's what, the rest of the team are thinking with Isaac's weird outburst, which is, completely understandable. Like, if you witness that, I think that is initially what you'd go to. You'd be like, "Oh." And Colin's like, "Nope, Isaac's not gay." And then when it cuts back to Isaac and Roy, and then it cuts back to Colin, and then what's said has been said, and it just sort of, I don't know, I like it because you know exactly what's happened, but you can, you know, fill in the blanks in your own way. And I think that's just, I think that was a risky move to do, because obviously that would be a big scene. But I think it worked well by not showing it.
Yeah, I think it's clever writing. I don't know, maybe it could have been something they found in the edit as well. Maybe they did shoot it and then they actually thought like, oh, we actually don't need these parts, and it's a bit more clever to do it like that. Yeah, I agree. I thought those scenes were really good. Yeah, the way it was cut, Colin, finally getting that off of his chest was really good. And from there, pretty much they go back onto the field after Ted gives his terrible analogy.
Yeah.
I was literally watching it and I was like, where the fuck are you going with this today?
Yeah,
like, what are you doing?
I really enjoyed the fact that Colin called him out.
Yeah.
And then Ted was like, "Yep, you're right. I should have done that."
and then I loved how they were like, "Oh, we do have a game that we need it. Like, this is half time of the game. Like, we do need to go play a game." And
I enjoyed that they did that.
So they're gonna do like a little speech, like, where are we at with the game? And then they're like, so we're playing with one man down. What are we gonna do? Absolutely nothing. Was very good.
Yeah, I liked that. It's sort of like, I think that works for Richmond because it's, you know, they're a player down, but they're not going to let that affect the way they're playing or their morale or everything. And it worked, you know?
And I do think the way that total football works, you could get around with that, because you're always meant to stay within distance of the other players. So I think I think that would work out. I don't think there actually is a lot that they would have to change for that.
Yeah, and I think it just works well for Richmond as well. Like, a player down, they'd usually, you know, look at the West Ham game, you know, one player down, everything goes to shit. And then they ended up being, I think, like 3 players down or something. But, you know, they overcame it by not changing, not letting the fact that they were 1-0 down affect them. And, you know, they finished the match 2-1 up. So
go team.
A good match for Richmond.
And Colin is like loving it, because he got, I think, 2 goal assists in it. So he
got 2 assists and man of the match.
Oh, did he get man of the match? I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
That's cool. And he was clearly so excited at the end. Like, he gave out the biggest at the end. Like, clearly a weight lifted off of his shoulders. And eventually Isaac goes to meet him at his house later. An apologetic Isaac who was openly angry to Colin with the fact that Colin didn't open up to him about it. And I think he was, it was almost like he wasn't mad at Colin. He was more mad at himself, because he was questioning, like, what is it about me that you think you couldn't tell me this? Which I thought showed a really human side of Isaac.
Yeah, and I think it showed a very sort of realistic situation. Like, this is what we assumed was going to happen. Like, Isaac is annoyed that Colin couldn't tell him, but obviously, you know, at the same time, it's almost not, it's not Isaac's concern. Like, it's Colin, it's Colin's thing that he has to deal with. And I like the fact that they actually spoke openly about that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, with sort of the end of Isaac and Colin's story in this episode is that they just chill and hang out. They play FIFA, which I think is funny considering they're professional footballers. And they just chat, and it's just like nothing has changed. Yeah.
I love the little jokes that they were making as well there, where he's like, love you, and Isaac's like, I can't say it. Okay.
And it's just, I think it works. It's very perfect for those 2 characters and their friendship. And I'm glad that, you know, it's all sorted.
Yeah, it's all sorted. I'm glad it was like not a plot that went on forever. It just got one really solid episode that sort of wrapped it up, because it is a really important thing to a lot of people. I even saw on Twitter after the episode, someone said how much they related to Colin in it, because this person on Twitter had been gay for a while, and their best friend they didn't tell for ages, and their best friend had pretty much the same reaction to Isaac, and this guy was like, no, like, it's not you. Like, I was 99% sure that it wasn't you, but that was that you wouldn't react like that. But there's 1% of me that held me back from saying it.
Yeah. And, you know, like, even if you're like, you know, that's your best friend, you're always going to have that little fear, which is going to hold you back, which is obviously what they tackled in this episode. And I thought it was really effective, a really great story. it made me cry. It's the second episode this season that's made me cry.
Hey.
So yeah, it was Isaac that made me cry. So yeah,
Love
it was I really enjoyed that story.
Very sweet. I'm glad. Let's rattle very quickly through the Roy stuff since we covered most of it anyways. So at the start, yeah, Beard ends up doing the Roy the press conference that Roy couldn't go to, and Beard is just going fucking crazy. He's like,
it's just talking about classic rock.
Yeah. But he's like losing his mind.
Which I appreciated.
Over it. It's so good. Brendan Hunt's such a funny dude.
I really enjoyed in that scene when Rebecca takes over and then they ask her who the best classic rock guitarist is.
Yeah.
And she says the guy from Cream, which is Clapton.
Mm-hmm.
And I was cracking up. I thought, this is hilarious. I
like,
really enjoyed that whole scene.
I'm a musician.
Yeah, I did. I liked the fact that they were just I was sat there and I wanted more of that. I wanted to see the whole press conference.
So after the press conference, Rebecca storms into the boys' change room, and so
Shouts at Roy.
She has a go at Roy, and then as Roy goes to walk after her, everyone goes, "Ooh!"
Yeah.
And he turns around, they go silent, and then what he's like, "You boys have got change with me for years, and not one of you stood up to say that I didn't have a hairy ass." That's what he was sad about. That was so fucking funny.
Then Isaac's like, he's right.
Yeah. Yeah, and they blame the French. They're like, oh, the French guy, he's got the hairy ass.
No, I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed just Rebecca storming in and just shouting at him, because I think that Roy thinks that he's a bit untouchable in that regard. You know, like Roy does sort of what he wants. He doesn't really get involved in the sort of coaching aspects that Ted has. You know, like Roy doesn't get involved in the Diamond Dogs.
Yeah.
You know, Roy doesn't have a whistle. You know, he doesn't whistle. He doesn't do the same stuff that everyone else does.
Yeah.
And I think Rebecca really put him in his place. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely loved it. I thought, you know, Rebecca. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Rebecca's on it recently.
She is. The one thing I wasn't 100% on board with was that she goes off at Roy again about like an obvious analogy to his relationship with Keeley. Like, and she's already done it a couple of times with him. And then also, like, I loved last week where she kind of saved the day by giving Ted a huge talking to. And then she's sort of doing it again here by giving Roy another big talking to.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Are we just going to solve all the problems with Rebecca just yelling out all the problems? Like, I love the scenes individually, but when it's just happening quite frequently, I think it loses impact.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that it was necessary for Rebecca to have a go at Roy, because I don't think that Roy would respond to Ted as much. Mm-hmm. But, you know, like Rebecca is his boss.
Yeah.
And, you know, she snapped at him. And I think that really, it did put him in his place, and it did really like get through to him. But I think that, you know, Rebecca, last week, obviously she had that chat with Ted, and this week she's done it with like Roy. But I do think that, you know, something's going to come where, because she's got her own sort of issues and stuff that need to be dealt with.
Yeah.
So, you know, she's not going to be the, you know, the fixer of everything. But yeah. I've enjoyed it like last week and this week, just seeing her be badass.
Yeah. Boss bitch Rebecca is peak Rebecca. Yeah. That's what we like. So in the end, Roy talks to Isaac, and then at the very end, he fills in at the press conference, and, you know, we see an even more sympathetic side for him, who says, you know, it was kind of another analogy too many, where he goes on and he's like, I knew this kid in school, and I'm like, fuck me. Ted Lasso does this all the time, where it's like, it tells like the story where he's like, I knew this kid in school, and because Ted had already done one of those in the episode, and I don't know, it was just one too many for me, but the actual scene.
I don't know. I really enjoyed Roy's. Yeah, I really enjoyed Roy's press conference scene.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. I was really like engaged with it, and I enjoyed it. It balanced sort of the serious aspect with the humor really well. You know, the fact that he said "New Trent."
I know. I was about to say
that. Trent.
I love that so much. It's so funny.
Yeah, it was really well balanced. I really like that scene.
And he was really like, he was bouncing off of them. He was loving.
Yeah, I think he was enjoying it.
Yeah, he was. It was really good. Yeah. And then you could tell that Healy, who is clearly still sort of grieving over losing Jack.
Yeah.
You can just see like a look in her face where she's kind of like, oh, like this is the Roy that I want to see more of, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and
After
I
she
think,
sent a million texts to Jack.
Yeah, which is, I also think that's very normal.
Yes,
Like,
definitely.
I think this episode's done a very good job at just showing the realistic aspect to a lot of these characters and making them really relatable. And yeah, the last character that we need to touch on, I think, is just Nate's little storyline.
Yeah, we got to breeze over
which
him
isn't
pretty
major.
quick.
Yeah, it's just he's like filtered through, he's weaved through a little bit. I didn't get anything more out of the episode by Nate being in it. He could have not been in it, and I would have probably felt the same.
Yeah.
But I think that what they're doing with Nate is that they're setting up something for maybe next week or the week after. They're planting seeds, especially with his relationship with Rupert.
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily does a lot for this episode, but in the scheme of things,
Yes.
it does a lot, pushes a lot along, because
definitely.
it's basically an episode where he sort of starts to see and recognize the bad side of Rupert. Like he introduced Jade to him, and he's just kind of weird. Like, he's just fucking weird about it.
Yeah,
like,
I was thinking that
condescending.
Rupert's gonna make some sort of move on Jade.
Oh,
that's what I was picking up from the scene. He's looking at Jade and he's like, "Oh, she's pretty. What's she doing with him?"
Yeah.
And I think that's what towards the end, he's like, "Oh, we'll go for a lads night." Yeah, and then he gets two girls, and I think he's very much being sort of the snake in the Garden of Eden sort of thing. Like, he's trying to tempt Nate away from Jade. You're seeing a lot of like the manipulation come out of Rupert there.
Yeah.
Calling Jade Kate or something by mistake, and I'm like, something's going on here.
Yeah, and I loved Nate standing his ground and being like, "Oh, sorry, I just came here to tell you that I can't come." And then like the look that Rupert gives him is so like, you don't know what that look is. Like, it's so like fuck you, or like
that's gonna come back to Nate.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's like
there's gonna have repercussions to that.
If it's a feisty look, or if it's like a look of like, I'm just disappointed in you.
To me, I think I sort of read it as a sort of disrespectful look, like, how dare you?
Yeah.
And I think that's really gonna come back and bite Nate on the arse, like, that's not gonna. But I think, we'll see, that'll help Nate see just how evil Rupert is. And
Definitely.
I hate Rupert, and I said this all the time, I hate Rupert, but I love him. I love seeing Rupert in episodes because he's just such a great villain.
He is. I sort of felt like that look was like, oh, I'm kind of disappointed. Like, you're not the fucking cool Mr. What's it, Kid Wonder? That I thought you were.
Rupert knows that Nate isn't that.
Yeah, but I think he enjoys the Nate that he can impress and can take him out to meet these girls and stuff like that. And now that Nate's like standing his ground, I feel like, Rupert's kind of like, oh fuck, you're not the. I
think this is really gonna throw off a balance thing over at West Ham, which like, obviously we don't see a lot to do with Nate and West Ham and everything this episode. We see him, at the end of that scene, go back to Jade, and he just gives Jade a hug, which I think highlights how serious his feelings are for her. But I think that this is definitely going to come back next week after. Obviously we're approaching the end of the season. And I think that with Nate and Jade's relationship becoming very sort of more prominent in Nate's life, and his view on Rupert changing, that's going to really throw off the dynamic at West Ham. Throw off, because I think Nate maybe will lose a bit of respect for him. Rupert won't be as nice and friendly to him. The whole thing of that, what happened a few episodes ago, where he was like, "Oh, call me Rupert," and then he called him Rupert, and then he was like, "No, call me Mr. Mannion."
Yeah.
And then he was like, no, call me Rupert. You know, I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of that manipulation and mind games going on. But hopefully Nate's going to catch on to it.
Yeah.
So like the storyline over at West Ham didn't do a lot in the episode, but like you said, I think it's really going to help with the rest of the last 4 episodes now or something.
I think we've only got 3 more, 10, 11, 12, I think.
Yeah. So
yeah. The hug with Jade, obviously it was important. It's like he'd rather be with her and doesn't want to cheat on her or whatever. But I also sort of read it a little bit as like perhaps he's really regretting leaving Richmond now, like because he doesn't have that with his staff, but he doesn't have that friendliness, and we've seen that over the last 2 episodes. He's tried to replicate that, but he's not been able to get it there. And so I feel like this is that I kind of read into it a little bit like that as well. Surely, very, very, very quickly before we crown the MVP, surely you are starting to like Nate more now. I know you said you despise Nate. Surely you like him now. After all this.
A little bit. Okay. I like him. I like, how he is with Jade and everything.
Yeah.
But I think it's just, we'll just have to see. We'll have to see where I stand at the end of the season with him. Because by the end of series 2 and, not the majority of this season, I hate him. Yeah. End of series 2, I hated him. So we'll just see how it goes.
We'll see. All right.
Definitely humanizing him a bit more though, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Vinny, your most viable player for this week's episode. Who did the most?
Okay.
Who impressed you the most?
So, I mean, I have 2, but I have 1 at the same time. So sort of my, second place MVP is Roy.
Right. Yep.
I think, there was a lot of development for Roy's character, and I think that he really achieved a lot in his own right. But my MVP is Colin.
Yep, it's got to be Colin.
I think it's such a good episode for Colin, and we've not focused on Colin a lot throughout the show, but obviously we had that episode earlier in this season, very focused on him.
Yep.
And this is sort of a bookend to that, and I think that it's just been great, and it's totally Colin's episode through and through, especially like, he opens up to the team, and then obviously he does really well in the match. It's got to be Colin. There's no one else.
He assisted the game. He stood up, came out, which is huge for him. And he just wants to keep it within the team because I don't think he wants the big attention and stuff that the media would blow it up to be. So I think, it's definitely got to be Colin. For me, a second place would be Isaac for him sort of standing up for his friend, even though he didn't go about it the right way. But I can also see the Roy justification there. All right.
Yeah, defo.
Banging. What an episode. What
Wonderful.
A fun episode.
Great episode. Really enjoyed it. Look forward to next week.
Yep. Yeah, only 3 more. Thank you very much for joining us, Vinny. Joining me once again, and the listeners, I guess.
Yes.
Well, thank you for listening. Follow us, subscribe, give us a 5-star review because you love us.
Yeah, and share us. Listen to some old episodes if this is your first episode.
Tell your friends because
tell your friends, tell your family.
Nice. Yeah.
Friends are nice. That's what we're ending on.
That's it. Friends are nice. We'll see you next week, everybody. Thank you.
See you next week. Bye.